Tokenize, let's innovate, bringing answers to the digital state. From finance to games, we're redefining, connecting the dots, the future is shining.
Okay, so I'll at least start with the intros here. I'm delighted to have Edan Yago here. I think we've known each other since 2013. The early conferences where we were both on the little Inside Bitcoins roadshow. A bunch of us merry warriors that got sent on the road to talk about Bitcoin in places like Berlin and Hong Kong. And we would just pop up every couple of weeks in the new city and say, okay. And it was magical days. I remember the first Bitcoin conference in Hong Kong. They had a mixer the night before for the Bitcoin Association of Hong Kong, BAHK, which is actually still around. And I remember there was just like a whole bunch of young, Chinese kids talking about what they were doing. And one very lively, American black kid who was just introducing me all the way around and saying, excited to be here. Glad you guys can come and talk about Bitcoin. And that was Arthur Hayes. So we met a lot of the early people who were just starting up things and are now billionaires and changed the world. And this is phase one, first 10 years. I mean, we're 15 years in, almost 16 to Bitcoin now, but it still seems early, doesn't it? Even though it's $100,000 instead of 100. And I think that really what you're doing as a technologist is really powering this second phase of Bitcoin. So your thoughts on the last 10 years, the next 10 years?
Well, I think the last 10 years have been about establishing Bitcoin as something that's not going away. I remember my very first conference, the very first time I was in Vegas, it was Bitcoin that brought me here. And I remember walking with some people, I actually remember I remember learning that I was much more naive than I thought. I was walking and I said to two of the gentlemen that I was walking with, there seem to be so many older men here with much younger girlfriends. Is that a Vegas thing? And then one of them said to me, "Those are prostitutes." And then the other, the other component, or the learning was how remarkably fast things were growing, because in 2013 San Jose conference was not much larger than this, and then just a year later the Vegas conference was many orders of magnitude greater. But there was the necessity over the last, what effectively was 15 years of Bitcoin having to be beaten down and then come back stronger every single time for it to be established as something that isn't going away. Now, the fact that it's become a macro asset is still not accepted by everyone, but I think there's some very clear things which are happening, right? So the US has a 6% annual deficit. In order to neutralize that, which is the current plan, that means nominal GDP has to grow by 6%. So that's effectively $8 trillion that needs to enter the market over the next just 3 years. We have over the next 5 years, $10 trillion to be inherited by millennials from their boomer parents. So that's another $10 trillion where millennials have the majority of their capital in crypto. And so that we will see that pattern follow. And then there's the other big thing.
Is that true already, that millennials have the majority of their capital in crypto versus real estate?
Yes, in the US, certainly. I don't know about Europe, but in many other countries, liquid capital.
Liquid, okay.
Liquid capital.
They certainly have more in crypto than in gold and silver.
Yes. And then there are many other countries where it's the absolute majority. And then the third thing, probably the most important driver that everyone is talking about is AI, which is certainly going to drive very, very significant productivity growth. We're already starting to see it. I'm seeing it in my own business, and I'm sure many of you are seeing it in yours. But that isn't primarily being captured by the AI companies. Those are very, very commoditized and being competed away. And so what happens when you see very, very significant productivity gains, right? They need to be captured somewhere. And if they're not, if the companies are commoditized and are not able to capture it, then what ultimately happens is it gets captured by whatever ends up being the bottleneck or happens to be the scarce asset. And so once again, that's a major macro driver for Bitcoin. And all of this without a single mention of the fact that the world is going to hell and the geopolitical situation just globally looks extremely iffy. So I think Bitcoin over the next couple of years is going to be canonized, right? We're seeing it in sovereign wealth funds. We're seeing it in the US government. We're seeing it with BlackRock. Bitcoin, to the extent that this is the last moment. It's the end of the beginning. So then the question then becomes, well, okay, now what can we do with it? And so there's been two answers to that question. One answer to that question has been the broader crypto ecosystem, right? What I think you can just generally call smart contract chains, right? Ethereum, Solana, Arbitrum, Avalanche, etc. What all of those are trying to do is build applications that can use digital property. So that one answer was let's build systems that can have can have tokenized assets and allow them to have services and applications built in that can utilize those tokenized assets. The other answer has been let's try and figure out how we can put the BTC itself to work. And so what we're doing with Bitcoin OS, and I'll get into what Bitcoin OS is in a moment, but what we're trying to do is we're trying to facilitate effectively both those things by combining them. So there's hundreds of thousands of BTC out there today that are looking to be put to work. They want to be able to be utilized either as collateral or they want to be generating yield. And frequently those are actually the same thing. And yet, despite that, we do not see even a small fraction of that BTC in motion today. We're not seeing it's BTC is still utilized as if it's a stranded asset. And the reason is that the custodians, the large holders, and the entire culture of Bitcoin has been built around reducing elements of counterparty risk, elements of rehypothecation, and basically avoiding all of the risks that you would typically take upon yourself. And this is in part because of the basic philosophy of Bitcoin, but it is much more because of the failures that we've seen in the banking system, which caused the emergence of Bitcoin in the first place, the global financial crash of 2008, to which Bitcoin was a response. And then since then, FTX, all the way back to Mt. Gox and even before. And so what custodians and large holders and, people like ourselves who have been holding Bitcoin for a long time have been looking for is the ability to put their BTC to work without it having to leave the Bitcoin chain, right? Without having to use these sort of bridges, which are basically, for those of you, actually, this might be even more entertaining for people who are in crypto. But the way I think of the crypto ecosystem today is it's like a bunch of casinos on little islands. And then if you want to move between the little islands, you get into this little rowboat. And then every now and again, North Korean pirates come and take all your shit. And so this bridging concept has proven extremely poor from a risk-reward adjusted basis. And so people want to be able to put their Bitcoin to work on Bitcoin. But up until now, that has been completely impossible. And the reason it's been completely impossible is because that the entire application space has been built outside of Bitcoin. So this has been a problem that I and a number of the people who are working with me have been trying to solve now for 14 years. One of the first attempts was colored coins. It was really the first effort ever to try and build tokenization on Bitcoin. And we were constantly banging our heads against the limits of both what cryptography at the time could offer and what Bitcoin
So the original inscriptions way before ordinals, those were the original NFTs way before, CryptoKitties.
Yeah. So, so, and in the intervening years, I helped set up one of the first remittance companies that used Bitcoin as cross-border payments, and we needed to find a way to do cheap transactions. And so, one of the developers who was working for me at the time, Thaddeus Deirdre, became the inventor of Lightning Network. So that was developed at my company. Then later, we built out Sovereign, which became the largest DeFi or decentralized financial protocol for Bitcoin, and have since issued hundreds of millions of dollars in stablecoins backed by Bitcoin, and allowed for trading. But still, there were security sacrifices that we needed to make with Sovereign. And so the same group of people have been, over the years, have been banging their head against this problem. Now, in the panel just a moment ago, there was a gentleman sitting here, and he said, all of those great ideas that you heard 10 years ago, call those people up and tell them now's the time. And that's been our experience. So the cryptography that is available to us today has matured and improved dramatically, especially over the last 2 years. Bitcoin itself has changed. There was the introduction of new form of transactions and cryptography allowed into Bitcoin called Taproot in 2020. And we, in 2021, realized that Taproot and where cryptography was going, particularly ZK proofs was going, would allow us for the first time ever to marry Bitcoin with the full sweep of programmability, functionality, and scalability that other chains have attempted to develop using ZK proofs. And so we set our mission to build that. Last year at the Bitcoin conference, which was held at the time in Nashville, this conference, but a year ago, the same day that Trump got on stage and sort of outdid us, we got on stage and did something terrifying for anyone who's ever given a technology tech demo. We did something live on stage. And what we did live on stage was we verified the first ZK proof ever in Bitcoin on Bitcoin Mainnet in block 853626, which I've since started to call the block of revelations. Because with that, Bitcoin suddenly had eyes to be able to receive proofs of things that were happening outside of Bitcoin, and a brain to be able to understand them. And over the last year, we have been building an entire operating system around this technology to allow developers to build anything on Bitcoin permissionlessly, no forks required.
And of course, part of that now is we were just on stage yesterday talking about how this is now working now across an Omnichain of effect with Litecoin, Dogecoin, and other UTXOs.
Yeah, so one of the remarkable things that happened, we were building this for the purposes of Bitcoin. And, I'm one of those Bitcoin maximalists. But some of the first people to recognize the value in what we were doing were actually people from the Cardano community. Cardano have built a system in many ways very similar to Bitcoin. UTXO-based system, so that's the accounting system, is very, very similar to Bitcoin. And philosophically, and many design decisions that Cardano made were similar to Bitcoin's. And so they recognized that what we were building would suddenly make the smart contracts and the entire ecosystem, this $30 billion ecosystem, would suddenly be able to plug into Bitcoin and execute transactions that would settle on Bitcoin. We then had a similar realization, and this was announced yesterday, that the same could be done with Litecoin, another, $10-12 billion ecosystem. And by plugging Litecoin and Cardano, and soon Doge and Monero, into Bitcoin, something remarkable happens. Suddenly, we move from a world of these fragmented chains to sort of a unified mega network where the specific advantages of each of these different systems is able to sort of shine and be and interact interoperably with these different things. So you could imagine sort of like the future of community meme tokenization happening on Doge, plugged into smart contracts from Cardano through Bitcoin with fast private transactions occurring on Litecoin, and the whole thing settling to Bitcoin. Right now, we can only do this with the UTXO chains, but we're already in the process of expanding that. So we're building what you could think of as adapters, which will also then allow chains like Ethereum, Sway, Tron, any other chain, account-based systems chains, to integrate into Bitcoin as well. And so I think the next phase of crypto is we've been promising this sort of internet of value for 15 years. We've been saying it for so long that it's become really cringe. But I think we finally have the technology.
Well, what's really interesting is in the beginning was Bitcoin, right? It was 100% of the asset class. By the end of the first halving cycle, you had Litecoin, right? It was, as Charlie had said, it was, silver to Bitcoin's gold. And then you had some other things were experiments that failed, Devcoin, Feathercoin, etc. And then you had this explosion with the Ethereum ICO, excited so many people, and then the ICO phenomenon that grew to the point that Bitcoin dominance went down into the 30s. Ethereum went up, and there was talks of the flippening, the day that Ethereum would be worth more than Bitcoin, because that never happened and has been diverging since. But it's interesting to see that there's an explosion of altcoins, the best of which added quite a bit of value of things that Bitcoin couldn't do. And now you're having this sort of big bang reversal where the best of the altcoin experiments can now come back and settle on Bitcoin.
Yes, exactly right. And I think that was always what Bitcoin was meant to be, a global ledger, a global borderless settlement mechanism. And I kind of sort of like say, the original sin of the smart contract space was Vitalik losing patience. He also was working on color coins, but he was 19 years old and he lost patience and he went and built another chain, right? But
started out as a Bitcoin Maxi. He started Bitcoin Magazine.
That's right. But in so doing, I think he, the reason I was, one of the primary reasons I thought Ethereum would struggle is because when you look at what we're building is a network. Money is based on network effects. My money is useless unless Michael's willing to accept it. Liquidity is a network effect. And blockchains are literally networks. So that too is a network effect. And in network systems, you tend to always end up with winners takes most. And so when the industry over the last 10 years went through this journey of breaking network effects, I think we were fundamentally, like from first principles, missing the point. But now there's the opportunity to sort of correct that error. And I think for that, we need to have a Schelling point. There needs to be a central hub. And it is unquestionable in my mind what that hub is going to be. It's going to be Bitcoin. And so what I think the next 10 years is going to be the integration of these systems into Bitcoin. Bitcoin becoming, instead of the internet of value, basically becoming a component of the internet itself. So the internet now is the internet of value, the internet with value. And these different systems that have been built around will either plug into Bitcoin, and right now I think they're in a race to do so, or they're going to struggle. And so I think, if you...
the value layer of the internet, just like MP4s of the video layer, etc.
Yes, that's exactly right. And like, if you think about the way we've constructed our system, it's very much like the internet itself, right? These little packets of proofs get passed between systems. And so the fact that you can now verify on Bitcoin these little packets of proof means that instead of sort of treating a blockchain as this giant pipe into which the smart contract and the data and the consensus and the compute all needs to be shoved, you just process tiny little 300 byte proofs. It's a very different paradigm. So just to finish the thought,
We'll wrap because Adrian's hovering, but
thank you. So So I think there's massive opportunity here. Bitcoin is far superior to gold in the world that we're moving toward. Millennials prefer it. It's the fastest horse. It can move across borders in an increasingly precarious global world, and it can work with AI. Bitcoin is going to be many multiples the size of gold. And around Bitcoin, we are going to see an ecosystem of like the next Microsoft, Facebook, the next $1 trillion projects. So Cardano may seem overpriced today at $30 billion. But if it proves to be a key component of the compute infrastructure for Bitcoin, it might be the next Facebook. Thank you very much.
Thank you.